Well, good evening from Ireland. I am live and well and kicking with three amazing men, the three wise men, and we're off to a flying start. So thank you everybody for coming on, and I'm quite sure we'll get a few more people on. Remember, if you're on my page, Evelyn McAleer, if you want to ask any questions or put in comments, I can certainly click on them and ask the gentleman at any time. So thank you very much. My name is Evelyn McAleer. I am author, speaker and mentor, and I'm delighted to have amazing guests with me tonight, three of them, in fact. A brilliant way to spend my Saturday night. So without further ado, I am going to introduce my guests to you, and I am going to switch off my phone because I heard it just pinging there. So let's switch that off. So my first of my wise men, and a very wise man he is indeed, Dr. Jeff O'Driscoll. Now, Dr. Jeff is a physician, an author, an international speaker, a father, a brother, a husband, and all those wonderful things, and a dear friend, and his mission in life where he exists to help souls heal. So I am going to bring on Dr. Jeff now. Hello, Jeff.
Hello, hello. It's wonderful to be with you. I'm just dazzled by that brilliant video you put together at the beginning of this program. Special.
And thank you very much. And I hope your internet's strong enough, Jeff, because we're cutting in and out a wee bit. I'm going to get back to you in a wee second because I have to go on to my wise man number two, the second of the wise men. And in no particular order, I feel like this is Mr. Universe. So I'm going to introduce you now to an amazing man, a dear friend and a mentor for me, Declan Coyle. Declan, I'm going to read this out. It's the first time I've actually introduced you. Is this the director of Antec Communications? Declan also is an author and international speaker. He's a former County Cavan footballer and also a former Colombian father for 27 years. He's also now a father himself to three, a husband, a son, a brother, and a great friend of mine. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Declan Coyle.
Thank you very much, Evelyn. And maybe you do have the three Mr. Universes. With picks.
All oneness. I know the bikini section. I don't know who would do what section here, Declan, though. Thanks, Declan. And my third of my very, very wise friend, another wonderful human being. And when you just know when energy connects, it just connects. A beautiful soul, Jeffery Olsen. Jeffery is an author, an international speaker with all them things in common, these great men, a mentor. And as he says, among his many accomplishments, he is most fulfilled by simply being a husband, a father, and a friend. And that is certainly what he is. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mr. Jeffery Olsen. Oh, your mic's muted, Jeff.
What a pleasure to be with you, Miss Evelyn. It's great to be among these other two fantastic gentlemen and you and your energy, and I'm honored to be a part of this. So thank you.
Well, thank you, guys. That's all my paperwork. I'm setting it to the side. Not that I required it, but I wanted to give you the proper introduction that I could for you. And I want to thank you all so much for your time. And it was never a problem when I reached out and asked you, would you like to do this? Not a bother. Not a bother at all. And that's the beautiful thing I always say about energy. It flows effortlessly when we allow it. So I'm going to start off, and nobody knows any questions, and I don't have a big pile of questions for you guys, but the intention for tonight that we have all here is to bring hope, is to bring joy, and to raise vibrations, and to transpire, transmit, and transform that probably darkness or heavy energy that is about probably within us all as well, but how we choose to see things and change the way we see things so that life can be very different and very, very special indeed. But before I start, I'm going to ask each of you, I'll start with you, Dr. Jeff, because you're the first man on, to give us a bit about yourself. What took you to here now? So just in case anybody's watching that doesn't know who you are.
For 25 years, I was an emergency physician, and I helped people heal their physical bodies. And I had some profoundly spiritual experiences during that time, one of which involved our good friend, Jeff Olsen. After I stopped seeing patients a few years ago, I finally started to share some of my spiritual experiences, and now I try to help people heal their souls. I meet with them personally as a one-on-one mentor. I wrote a book, as you mentioned, and I speak a lot. And it's a fulfilling, wonderful blessing to be able to help people heal, regardless of whether it's their souls, their bodies, their emotions, their spirits. That's what we're here for. We're here to help each other. That's why I do what I do now.
Well, thanks, Jeff. Declan, Coyle.
Well, Evelyn, as you were saying, I grew up in a farm in County Cavan, and we had horses, cattle, sheep, and pigs, and all of that. But we had also a lot of handed down scripts from the 13th, 16th centuries. And a lot of that was conditioning and limiting beliefs and all of that. There was nothing ever, we were never taught anything in school about the power to choose. But we did help out neighbours on the farm, and neighbours would help us. And I read an article in a missionary magazine called The Far East when I was 16. And it was about a Colombian missionary who was in El Monte, in a rubbish dump outside of Lima in Peru, and he had 40,000 people. I simply said, sure, if I go out and give him a hand, he'll only have 20,000. So joined the Colombians, ordained 69. Instead of getting out I was sent to postgraduate studies in Ottawa, then appointed to teach in Boston. But I wrote to the Superior General and I said, I've had 9 years of post-secondary school, high school study. And my problem is that I think I know it all, with all this academic stuff from books in my head. But if you give me 5 years in a slum in Latin America, the Philippines, with the slum dwellers who've been to the University of Life and survived, and they teach me, and I get this in my blood and my guts and my bones, then I'll teach anywhere. Instantly, I was sent to a slum in the Philippines for 5 years. Horrific place. The last 90 days, I checked the funeral book. I buried 65 children under 2 years old, all who died from hunger or hunger-related diseases. And I set up all kinds of projects: green banks, cooperatives, credit unions, pig projects, hen projects, sewing projects, fishing projects. And at the end of it, Dennis Murphy, a Jesuit, did a debrief with me. And he praised me to the heights about all the great things I'd done. And then he asked the key question, the life-changing question. He just simply said to me, as only a Jesuit could say it, are you a happier, more creative, more vital, more innovative person than you were 5 years ago? Or are you more angry and bitter and resentful? And I remember snapping at him. And I said, Dennis, did you hear a single thing I told you? I just told you I buried 65 children who died from hunger in a world full of food. Of course, I'm more angry and bitter and resentful. What do you expect? Happy clappy, all is well. I have news for you, Dennis. All is not well. He waited for about a minute. It seemed like 10 minutes. And he simply said very quietly, if you're coming back to the slum, bring the people joy or bring them nothing. Because the last thing they need is another serious, long-faced, miserable, cranky missionary priest working for justice and peace. The end must be prefigured in the means. You must live the utopia you're talking about and bring the people joy, or because bring in anger. Your projects are merely a container. The contents are your inner peace and joy. And if I want a Mercedes-Benz from you, you cannot give it because you haven't got it. If I want inner peace and joy from you, if you haven't got it inside, you cannot give it. And that brought me back to my visiting professor in Ottawa, the great Dr. Viktor Frankl. And he said every morning in Auschwitz, in the torture camps, I made a choice to be happy. And it was like, I made that choice every day. So that was the beginning of it, Evelyn. Bring the people joy or bring them nothing. And I think you started off with bringing people hope and bringing people joy tonight. But it's a great mission still.
Thank you, Declan. And that's always, do you know how many times I have quoted you quoting? I use the second-hand quote because I always remembered. Thanks, Declan. And Mr. Jeffery Olsen himself, sir, what has took you to this point in time?
Wow. Well, first of all, I think it's uncanny that both Dr. O'Driscoll and Declan and myself all grew up on the farm. We all knew how to get our hands dirty and go to work, and that's a great, there's a kindred spirit about that. What brings me here is I'm most well known for my near-death experience. I was in a horrific automobile accident that took the lives of both my wife and my youngest child. And I suppose you could say it took my life as well. I left my body, I left these realms, and I got to peek into what I call the afterlife, or that other place. Really, the best word for me is home. I got to visit home for a moment. and was held in the divine arms of unconditional love to such a magnitude that there really aren't words to explain that. But I knew in coming back, Dr. Jeff teases me and says, "You're the only guy I know that got kicked out of heaven." And I suppose I did. But with all the grief and all the torment, and Brother Declan, what a beautiful, what a beautiful intro. I was told by the divine to choose joy, that it was a choice, that I had that choice. I could be miserable and angry and live my life that way, and that was okay. That was a choice. But I could choose to let go, to move forward, and to literally come back as a manifestation of that pure, undivine, or that pure, unconditional divine love that I had experienced. And that's my role, Miss Evelyn. I mean, that's what I'm here for. If I can show up in any one person's life as that divine, unconditional love, then that's my purpose, and that's why I'm here. I was asked only one question in those realms, and I went into it believing, as Declan pointed out, a belief system of, wow, judgment, fear, and the only question I was asked is, to what degree have you learned to love? And in experiencing the most profound love I'll ever know, that's the question I would ask all of us. To what degree have we learned to love? And Miss Evelyn, I certainly know that you love deeply and madly and unconditionally, and I'm honored to be with this group.
Thank you, Jeff. Honestly, see, I always remember what the words, and I've used that so many times this week, Jeffrey, whenever you were in the presence of that God divine energy. And that was the only question you were asked. To what extent did you learn to love? That there was no judgment. And I think perhaps that through, as Declan was saying, the scriptures, everything that has been handed down, but I get probably how they were delivered to us, or how it was told, that we have a fear sometimes of in life of living, that there's right or wrong, that there will be judgment, that there must be penance and sacrifice, and the guilt that we carry throughout life with us. Jeffrey, just want to start off by asking that to what extent did you learn to love? What did that feel like? Because you carried a lot of guilt for what had taken place.
Right. I mean, the context is I was driving the car. I may have dozed off at the wheel, which caused me to lose control of the car, which took the life of half my family. The guilt, I've been there. I know that. And to what degree have I learned to love? This was an interesting thing. This was a decade of bumping around down here. It's not an easy thing to go to the other side or to go home and then come back and say, where is all that love? Where's the love I experienced there here? And to search for it and look for it and do all kinds of crazy things to get that same validation and that same unconditional connection that I experienced. And the bottom line, Miss Evelyn, is I could not experience unconditional love, nor could I give it until I learned to love myself. You know, the great master Jesus said that, love your neighbor as yourself. Well, I came back with a great passion for loving the neighbors. But it wasn't until I dug deeper to love and honor myself that I realized that's where the healing began. Not from the outside in, not from validation from others, but from literally within myself, to love myself, forgive myself, and allow that to ripple out. And suddenly, it was like a prime wave that went out. Suddenly people just said, wow, what is it you're doing? What is it you're experiencing? And it was love. But it was self-love. I could not give what I did not have. And until I had self-love, could I truly unconditionally love those around me. And it was a beautiful process. It's still a process. You know, I'm not going to sit and profess to say, hey, I'm the guru, I figured it all out. No. But I'm simply walking with others as they find their answers and their truth and their way of being. And I've also learned in that unconditional nature that we can be on completely different paths, and yet we can still walk hand in hand with each other without the judgments, without the comparisons, or without the right-wrong game that we so often play in this world.
Thanks. And anybody, I'm quite sure, that's listening, you can just feel You can feel the energy, and that's what I've always felt from you, Jeff. Declan, and I'm going back up to you now, Jeff, in a minute. That reminds me, I do believe I had a conversation with you whenever Jeffrey just said about to love your neighbour as yourself. And this came up, I do believe, the other week, to love yourself as you would the neighbour. You said that. I do, just as remembering, I think this came up, Declan had mentioned this.
Yeah, it was, I was giving a talk one time to a group of, were nurses in Cork. And I gave them, you know, the founder of the Hard Rock Cafe, when he got burned out, and he redid the principles is, number one, your personal health and energy, number two, your family, and number three, your work. And they were the three principles he rebuilt it on. But I said, this lady attacked me, and she said, no, I don't care who you are, what kind of a guru you are, she says, but you will never convince me to put myself first. I will always put my family first. And I said, why won't you put yourself first? Because there's a huge difference between being selfish and loving yourself. And she said, well, I would put my family first all the time. Well, it's just, I'm a Catholic. And she said, that's where I got it. Love your neighbor. I said, hold on, you're missing a little bit of that. Love your neighbor as yourself. Now, all I can say is that if you women love your neighbor as yourself, then God help your neighbor. So it was that thing of like the as yourself, you know, as I have loved it, to get that, and that Evelyn, you keep talking about being worthy of that love, and that, you know, it's not who am I, it's not all of that, but once you get there and then you feel that power and you feel that joy and you feel that love inside, now go out and help. Now go out and reach out. Now go out and bring that joy to the world.
Thank you, Declan. Lovely. Dr. Jeff, and I'm going to refer to you as Dr. Jeff, so then that keeps my two Jeffs separate, although these are one, but these are separate. We had a chat or an interview one time ages ago, and I want to get these words, but you always deliver them, that you are enough. I want you to say them because you have the way of delivering them. There are three things that you normally say. Go ahead. Do you remember?
Yes, I was preparing to speak to a large group, and I take this very seriously when I speak to people. I try to connect and get the message, and I ask, what do you want me to say? And it came very clearly. Tell them they're enough. Tell them they're divine. Tell them they're loved. That was the message. And if I can just add on to what Jeff and Declan said about loving ourselves, I was in meditation. I was in prayer one day not so long ago, praying about something I thought I had to overcome to make myself better. And the voice that spoke to me said, your job is to love yourself as you are. And I thought, oh no, that can't be right. That contradicts everything. And then I understood the invitation, the imperative, if you will, is to love yourself. And we generally believe that when we get direction like that, we should honor it soon, immediately, not next week, not next year. And I finally realized the only way to love myself today is to love myself as I am. That's the only me that exists today. I can love next week's version of me next week, and I can love the thinner, more fit, more compassionate version of me next year if it gets here. But to love myself today, to honor the imperative today, I have to love myself as I am. And it's not an excuse. It's not a rationalization. It's who I am. I have to love myself right now as I am, and it's okay.
Thank you, Jeff. And I am going to go back on something that you just said, because it's clear to me whenever you say, I hear something, or when I go into meditation. But I want you to talk a wee bit about what you have experienced, because you have witnessed our experience. And this hasn't been, mentioned in your introduction, but I think it's so important. I think, especially for anyone that has gone through loss or bereavement, that have questioned, is there anything after here? Do we just go into the ground? Is it heaven? Is it hell? Is there purgatory? Is there limbo? I don't know if these places still exist or not. But from your what you have experienced and witnessed over the year as far as spirit entering and leaving?
Just before my 12th birthday, my older brother was killed in a farm accident. And I thought I got through that horrible experience without any spiritual wounds, without any psychiatric trauma, if you will. 20 years later, my deceased brother came to me and he said, "You have to go talk with our mother. There's things she hasn't told you about my death." And that kind of got my attention. So I went and I visited with my mother, and she told me that day for the very first time, she said, "Before Stan died, I always knew where you were in the house because I could hear you singing. When your brother died, you stopped singing." And that was when I first realized that it had had a major impact on me. It had changed who I was. And it was at that time I started to heal. And the more I healed, the more experiences I had. When I was a teenager, my brother came to me and he saved me from what I think would have been a fatal car crash. And sometimes when I worked in the emergency department, I would actually see souls leave their bodies when they died, and they would communicate with me before they left. The reason Jeff Olsen and I are friends is because when he was flown to my hospital, I went into the trauma room to see him, and he was unconscious on the gurney with a bunch of people providing his medical care. And his newly deceased wife, Tamara, was standing in the air above the gurney. And I saw her, and she communicated with me. And I have been dear friends for more than 20 years now since we had that. He was saying the most bitter and wonderful goodbye to Tamara at the same time I was meeting her for the first time and saying hello to her. And she's come to me a few times since. One of the things she said to me at one stage was, "Don't ever let anything come between your friendship with Jeff." That's one of the reasons I think we're so close. So when I talk about hearing a voice, sometimes I think it's the voice of the divine. Sometimes I think it's the voice of my deceased loved ones. Sometimes it's my own voice. And one of the things I do with my clients is I help them realize that if they think about it a lot and really have a difficult time deciding, and they conclude it's their own voice they're hearing, I tell them it's still divine. Listen to it. If it's your voice, it's still divine. Follow it.
Thanks, Jeff. And yeah, I know for people that some of the things may be difficult for the mind to understand, to see how does someone witness spirit? How do you see that? But I do believe you have to be at that place sometimes in yourself of the acceptance, or your mind is open, or that you're in tune with that to be in that perfect.
Sometimes the spirit has to club you upside the head with something to get you to listen. That's what happens to me often, because I'm a doubter sometimes. They'll say something, I'll go, "Oh, no. And they have to kind of pound it into me before I finally listen.
Mm-hmm. And I'm quite sure, Stephen, I'd say in the medical profession, I couldn't imagine on the tea break, and well, Jeff, how did your day go? Well, now wait till I tell you how many souls I saw leave and come in today. It just wouldn't be the conversation around the ham sandwiches, I'm sure. But this is the beauty, whenever people are ready to hear something, when you're ready, you hear it and then it happens. But I think it's so important to deliver that message that we don't die. The only death is that the death of the body, the form. But the energy is infinite. It never, ever ceases to exist. So thanks, Jeff, for that. Now, I want to go on to a wee topic, and we spoke about this way back. I was speaking actually to a lady last week who's a carer. And I think perhaps this time has been quite difficult for people that are in carers' roles, that whether they're in the home with their either a family member, but it can be challenging and difficult. And I know we have three very fabulous men that can talk on this subject from different points of view. Declan, you are a full-time carer of your wonderful son, Alexander. Jeff, you do know what it's like to live with a disability. And Dr. Jeff, you have seen it from both sides and point of view, from the carer and the patient. Declan, can I start with you first, please? This time for yourself, how have you found it, and how have you maintained your daily life and continued on to do what you're to do? And I want to talk a wee bit about Alexander, if you don't mind, just to let people know how special this lad is.
Yeah. Well, when you talked about God and unconditional love and all of that, I suppose we're very privileged here because we have the God of unconditional love living with us, Alexander. He just radiates love, unconditional love. And like he has Maud Wilson syndrome, the first child in Ireland to be discovered with Maud Wilson syndrome, which means he'll never talk. He won't walk until he's about 16. He's taking steps with a walker now. He hasn't eaten for the last 15 years. We feed him through a tube. He's tube fed through his stomach. He has multiple allergies. He has scoliosis. We have to put on a straitjacket on him every morning, put him into a stander for an hour and try and correct that. Because the allergies, we have to put on this cream on him every day. And he's on 33 medications a day. He's doubly incontinent. He'll be in diapers or nappies for the rest of his life. He was 4 months in Children's Hospital 2011, 4 months 2012. He was 11 days in intensive care where the doctors had given up on him. Having said that, he's the most radiant, beautiful child, just radiates love. And 2 years ago, like the government, the HSE, the health board took away his medical card, and we had a big campaign, 42 days to get all the medical cards back for all the terminally ill children. But during it, a politician came to the door who had voted against him in the parliament the night before. And I said, where's my double-barreled shotgun and my red platform, a politician? I went to the door and I said, I want to see Alexander. I saw him on television because we had a lot of television shows and that to get him back, get the cards back. And I said, look, you voted against him last night. Why did you do that? Oh, it's the system. I said, that's what they said in Auschwitz, is the system. I just want to see Alexander. So in he came, and Alexander's there, and waving the hands, big smile, total unconditional love. And I'm saying, Alexander, you're going to have to learn how to judge. Doesn't judge. It's unconditional. And he would have him up walking at Powers Court in his walker. And every car he sees, he waves. And people find themselves waving back. They wouldn't ever wave in their lives, But he is, and one day he came out, Evelyn, outside of the hospital in Tala, and there was this big bear in a leather suit and a Harley Davidson with the helmet and the beard and the belly and the zips and the tattoos. And he was really, really mad with the world. And he was there. And Alexander went over, waved to him, and the big bear put out a hand and shook hands with him. He can melt any heart, but it has been extremely challenging because in the first 100 days of lockdown, we had no help. So we had 3,300 medications, 800 bottles. We had to give them through syringes. We had 400 nappy changes. We had 400 duvets and all that. It was relentless day after day. And so we're trying now to get some support or some help. We have one nurse comes in for 6 hours now on a Monday. But I'll tell you, Evelyn, one day I'm down and I'm feeding him and a load of emails and stuff and people looking for Zoom calls and all that. And I'm feeding Alexander. And I was listening to a book by Mickey Singer, and there was a sentence came up in it and it changed it because I'm there and I'm split. The old Buddhist thing, you're only doing what you're doing. When you're washing the dishes, you're washing the dishes. But Mickey said, the world is unfolding in front of you now. It took 13.8 billion years to get here. Your only question is, how do I respond with joyful, loving service to whatever life is unfolding in front of me now? And I realized what's unfolding in front of me now after 13.8 billion years is feed Alexander with joy and stop thinking about the emails. And it brought me back, Evelyn. Just finished this in the bench in the kitchen a few months ago. I was cringing because I was exhausted and I was getting ready as medications. And I was, the old mind takes off, like, the voice in his head, sooner or later this will kill us. We can't keep this up and all the rest of it. And then I stopped and I said, this bench in the kitchen is a sacred altar. And these medications are Alexander's food, his bread of life. And I said, Cal Gibran said one time, he said in a poem, if you work and you do not work with joy, and he said, then it's better you get your begging bowl and sit outside the temple and beg from people who do their work with joy. Because he said, work is love made visible. And I said, that's it. From now on, everything that goes into Alexander will go with love and with joy. And I'm going to stop whinging.
Good man, Declan. Stop your whining. Beautiful. You know, I just sit smiling every time, and I just always keep thinking I'm so blessed that our paths cross, because you always inspire me through everything that you've been through in life. And yeah, absolutely blessed to have you. Jeffery Olsen, whenever Declan was talking, it reminded me of a video I once saw of yourself where you went out on the streets of where it must be your local city, was it?
Yes, Salt Lake City, yes.
Salt Lake City. And it was the first time probably I saw you out in public with your prosthetic leg where you were on crutches, and you had dressed down and you put a sign up. Was it just to look for a hug? Yeah,
it was to look for a hug. I mean, and Declan, I love how you spoke about, gosh, I've got to teach Alexandra judgment. my wife teases me. I have remarried since the accident. And my current wife, Tanya, says, Jeff, in your quest to become non-judgmental, I believe you've lost all good judgment. And perhaps that what I'd done, what we did, there's many homeless people around, and it was wintertime. It was Christmas time, actually. It was very cold. And gosh, I kept noticing all the people on the streets, living in the streets, and not just men, women, and even families, and how they, were dealing with what had gone on. And so at the time, my prosthetic limb was broken. In the accident I mentioned, both my legs were crushed. My left leg was amputated above the knee. I broke my back. My shoulder was damaged. My rib cage was damaged. The seatbelt cut through me and ruptured all my insides. I really have some physical things to deal with. And at this point, my prosthetic limb was broken, so I could not put it on. I wear a prosthetic limb to walk. So I went out on the streets on crutches with one leg, and I looked quite shabby. I dress down all the time. I'm more comfortable in a hat and jeans than I am in a suit and tie. But I went out with a sign that simply didn't solicit money or anything but a hug, just a hug. And it was interesting how many people walked by. You can see this on YouTube. If you go and search Jeff Olsen or Jeffery Olsen Lift, L-I-F-T, you can see this social experience and experiment. We wanted to see how many people stopped. And many just would walk by. In fact, they would ignore you. They would turn their head and, ooh, that, he's different. He's got one leg, and what's going on over there? And I'll never forget, it was ironic. None of this was staged. None of it was rehearsed. We just showed up with the sign, and my buddy was tucked back behind a doorwell with a camera, so no one could see him. It was a beautiful young woman in a bright red jacket. We couldn't have staged this or cast it any differently. And she saw the sign, and she turned around she laid down her Starbucks coffee, and she came over and just threw her arms around me and gave me this beautiful hug. And the interesting thing is, once she did that, we're on a busy city street. It took one person to notice the sign and make that step. I'm going to go hug that one-legged man. And then everyone came. Then suddenly there was just a lineup of people coming with hugs, but she was the hero. She was the one that said, to what degree will I love? I'm going to put everything aside. I'm going to go hug this man. And it was a beautiful thing. I see perfection in that. Dr. Jeff mentioned we always want it to be better tomorrow. One of my favorite pubs here in town, on the wall, it says free beer tomorrow. And tomorrow never comes, right? I mean, we only have today. And this whole thing about our self-judgments and those things that go on. And gosh, do I love the story of your son reaching out to everyone without judgments and comparison. He'll wave at the biker, he'll wave at the authorities that show up at the door, and he'll wave at everyone. And that to me is perfection. I often quote the great master Jesus. He's my master. I love, the Christ. But when he sat on the Mount, the Sermon on the Mount, and said, "Be ye therefore perfect." He didn't say become anything. He said, be that. Embrace the perfection that you are, just like your noble and beautiful and courageous son does. What a teacher he is. Be ye therefore perfect. There's nothing to become. Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They don't spin and toil and point fingers at each other. They simply reach to the light and honor joy and honor love and choose that every moment of their lives. And we, you know, Jesus wasn't talking about the flowers necessarily. He was talking about us. Be that. Embrace the perfection. I'm often frustrated with the disability. I'm an ex-footballer. I played American football. We call it soccer. You know, we call your football soccer here, but
Gaelic. We'll clear that one up now. It's Gaelic.
Yeah.
Declan Coyle wouldn't want to be referred to as a soccer man. We're meant to get that clear before judgment steps in.
there's the big ugly American, you know, calling it what we call it here. Anyway, I was an athlete. I loved my body, but I took it for granted. Now, you know, gosh, it's difficult. The boys want to hike or ski, and I've got to sit behind, and as I age and the injuries become more intense, we were at a premiere of a film that Dr. Jeff and I were in here just last night, and I said, "Doc, can I just take your shoulder?" It was a steep incline going down from the theater and on then upstairs onto the stage there, and you know it takes a lot for me to ask for assistance. Hey, Doc, can I just take your shoulder? Can I lean on you? Will you assist me down this ramp and up those stairs so that I don't fall and make a fool of myself in front of everyone? And yet, what a beautiful thing. I asked one day, you know, as my boys were hiking, and I couldn't go with them. You know, I couldn't go any further. And I said, I'll sit on the rock here, fellas, and I'll see you as you come back down the mountain. And I want to, you know, why? I hate this. And Spirit whispered to me and said, you know, you're meant to walk a little slower. That way you'll notice. You're meant to smell the flowers, to notice the flowers, to see the trees. And your life will be different because of this disability. But boy, will you see more. Boy, will you experience more. And boy, will you be more grateful for every step that you're upright. And I had a beautiful notion that day as I sat on that rock. I often refer to the Sermon on the Mount because I see these things within it. But I heard this profound Jesus saying, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." But in this instance, I saw it and heard it differently. It's almost like I was watching it or experiencing it. But what was said was, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God in everything and in everyone." And I just thought, wow, does that expand even in myself? By walking a little slower and limping the way I do, I'm allowed to take more in and to experience life maybe a little bit in slow motion. And what a beautiful gift. Anyway, we went out and we were homeless on the street for a day, and for someone to notice and acknowledge, hey, I see you. You're different, but you're human, and we're in this together, proved to me we're far more than human. We're actually divine, eternal beings. And the moment we begin to see that in each other and realize that in each other, that's when the world shifts. That's when everything changes, when we step into love without judgments and celebrate our diversity rather than trying to segregate it and pick sides.
I've been telling Jeff for decades that he's different. He just doesn't believe me sometimes. he used to talk about how he had his near-death experience, and he had one leg in heaven and one leg on earth. And I said, yeah, well, I guess we know which one they cut off, don't we?
Fabulous. That was lovely, Jeff. You know, yeah, totally. That as Declan would say, I think it is the greatness of me, the God divine within me sees the God divine within you. And that's the beauty. That's because it's all one. All of this here, all of us, is all one energy. We just look as separate entities because we're in different form. But that's how the energy all connects. Should we call it the God divine energy, it's our spirit, it's whatever, you know, our vibration, our frequencies, but that's how everything is attached. And I do believe that everything in our life is a mirror image of what is coming through us. We are life. We are the breath of life. And through me, and as we say, I love myself as I love my neighbor. I choose to love myself, to love my neighbor, not the outside in. And it's a wonderful way to look at how is life showing up for me. And some person could awaken and lose a leg and see life very different. But you also had to go through the anger, the resentment, the hate to also experience the beauty, to, as Declan would say, to transform that, to be able to bring, to be the healer, the mentor, the teacher. Dr. Jeff, so when everybody talks, and it just reminds me, oh, I must just mention that the next time round. So I'm going with the flow here. You had a beautiful interaction yourself with the gentleman that came into the emergency department, a homeless person, I do believe, as well, and you washed his feet.
I did. I never spoke of this experience for years until I started speaking with Jeff publicly, and he would elbow me and say, you have to share that experience. Tell him that experience. And so I finally started to share it. I was in the ER. I was taking care of a homeless gentleman. He looked rough. He looked 10 years older than his age. And he had long, scruffy hair and a big beard. And he struggled with addictions. And it was this time of year. It was winter, and he had holes in his shoes. His feet were in rough shape. And I filled a wash basin with water and put some soap in it. And I sat down at the foot of the gurney, and I took off his shoes, and I removed the last threads of his socks. And I washed his feet. And something miraculous happened. This veil that we talk about, this divider between this life and the next, was drawn back, and I saw who he was. And I was in the presence of the divine. I went into the room thinking I was going to serve this man, and I realized at that moment that he was there to minister to me. He was teaching me who I was. Because not only was I in the presence of the divine, but he was teaching me that I was that same thing, that I was divine myself. And it changed the way I viewed every soul since that day to the present. We're always next to God, whether we're sitting in the gutter or in church. That's who we are. That's who the person next to us is. We just don't see it sometimes.
Lovely. I always feel it when you speak. I always feel the energy. Thank you so much. You are all masters. And I know that you are all my walking encyclopedia. Should I ever need a quotation or something from anything biblical? But it's not religious either. So I want to put that out to anyone that's watching here now. Anything that we speak about when we speak about God is perhaps not the God that has been talked about, that it is separate from us, that we fear, that we're in judgment of. And it was one of the changing point, a turning point in my life, where I went in search of God. And I went to all the places that I thought I'd find God. I went to different churches on the QT, on the quad, sneaking away to find God to bring me that peace, until I went and found this gentleman, Declan Coyle. And when he spoke at the end, and he says, I want to speak about God. And I nearly leapt out of my skin with excitement, thinking, he's going to do it. He's going to do it. Because we're nearly afraid to speak about that, which, you know, it's a taboo kind of subject. But I think God has been given bad rap, bad press for quite a number of years. People doing things, saying in the name of God and whatever. But Declan Coyle said the word that you are the host to the God divine energy. And sometimes we can hear things, but I felt it. I felt it there and then, and I breathed. And I knew that was it. I knew that was my searching. Now the journey began. Not to say the journey had complete, but now I have found, now I know that, and everything started to make sense. Declan, you have been a Colombian father for 27 years, if I'm right. if I'd done my research. Imagine having to research into that. In all the conversations that we have had, I never asked you that question before. From your transitioning, I guess, from the religious aspect of that, but knowing that there was something more, but you still deliver what it is that you do in a different platform. How has that, for you, for religion, do you find that it has been constrictive, or have you saw different ways of seeing things around religion?
Yeah, I'd say that, as I mentioned the other day in the thing, that if you see God as the moon, and, religions are a finger pointing to the moon, and that's fine. That's our job as in religion and spirituality, to point to God and to help people to have that encounter with the divine. But we get into trouble when we think the finger is the moon. And it's that inside, it's that on a radio station here on Monday, a national radio station, the gentleman asked me, do you believe in God, And I said, now it's 3:45 on a Monday afternoon. People are in their cars, and women and men are in their kitchens around the country. And you ask me, do I believe in God? Now you have to, if this God is a white bearded man in the sky who looks like your grandfather and is very angry and vindictive and vicious and, is full of judgment and, is just looking for every opportunity he can get to fill hell. No, I don't believe in that God. Nor do I believe in the politically correct God who is a massively overweight Afro-American lesbian. I don't believe in that God either. But I said, the God of compassion, the God inside, the one who is radiant from inside, who fills our heart with God who is love. And that's what continues. And when I see the blind man came to Jesus and Jesus' simple question was, what do you want me to do for you? And the man said, Lord, that I may see, And that reminded me of Jeffrey's, blessed are the pure of heart, for the Lord, that I may see. It's both literal and symbolic, And Jesus said, yes, okay. And he says, I will grant you sight. Oh, just a second. Are you by any chance separated? Are you are you gay? Oh, well, forget. No. There was none of that exclusion. There was none of that. It was pure, unconditional stuff. And yet we love judging and excluding and all the rest of it. So one thing, Jeffrey, you said about being slow. Just a quick little thing about respond to that. When I was in Taiwan, after the Philippines, I worked in the slum in Taiwan for 6 years. But there's a big gorge in Joker Gorge on the east coast of Taiwan. And it takes 5.5 hours to walk it. 3 of us, a New Zealander, European, myself, we decided we'd walk in 5 hours. So we're doing a very fast pace up the gorge. And Jeffrey, we were moving. And then there in the corner, I saw 10 Chinese Buddhist nuns with their hair shaven like 10 little Sinead O'Connors. And they had a high-ace van. And one of them said, excuse me, she said, but you're missing the gorge. And I turned and I said to her, missing the gorge, but I'm in the gorge is here, the gorge is there, the gorge is everywhere. How could we be missing the gorge? Since from the moment I saw you in the distance as little dots, I knew you had to be from the west. Probably from the States, she said, because you're missing the gorge. I said, what? She said, Zosha, sit down. I sat like a dog. Sit. I sat. Then she said, close your eyes. I closed my eyes. Then she said, thingy thing, gender thing. Listen, really listen. I listened, I heard nothing. But then gradually I heard the cacophony of sounds coming out of the gorge. The insects, the flow of the water, the birds camouflaging the trees, and the breeze coming through the trees and the birds. And so there was a whole cacophony of sounds coming out of the gorge. Then she said, can you count? Now she says, look and see, really see. I saw the blues, the greens, the purples, the violets, and the blue dome over it all. And then she said, Sanset Chidangako. Now 3 times she says, breathe in deep the gorge. And after the pollution of Taipei, to get the fresh air on the east coast of Taiwan, which was fantastic. And then she turned her little porcelain chin up to me and she said, see, you are missing the gorge. And I looked ahead and I saw what the others were going on ahead, and I knew I was going to have to run to catch them. And she hit me in the solar plexus with the next sentence. She said, "I hope this is not a symbol of your life." I said, "You can sing it, baby. It's a symbol of my life, because destination addiction, getting there was what my life was about at the time. And the mountain of success is going to be very lonely if we don't enjoy the climb and the view and the companionship on the way up." And Dr. Jeff, just to say to you that from my scriptural studies, the first three Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, had the institution of the Eucharist. But then John, writing 30 years later, saw there was a lot of messing at Mass and all the rest of it. So at the very place of the institution of the Eucharist, John drops it. No institution of the Eucharist in John's Gospel. Instead, he put in the washing of the feet. And I always say, Dr. Jeff, that the neglected Eucharistic symbol is the jug and the basin. When we hold up the bread and wine at Mass, we should also hold up the jug and the basin, because this is living love made visible.
Is it all right if I comment on that, Declan? When you were talking about your experience in the gorge, it just resonated with me, because one of the things I work a lot with my clients on is they are so consumed with becoming. They're working so hard to become something, and they completely miss being.
Yes.
They miss living in the present. They miss taking in the aroma of the flowers that Jeff talked about. They miss taking in the smells of the place that they're in. They miss experiencing what they are because they've done something. And the irony is, the only place, the only way you can experience perfection is in the present. As long as perfection's in the future, you can't experience it. God and perfection are only experienced in the present.
Wow. I've got to jump in. I love that, gentleman. Declan and Dr. Jeff, thank you so much for what you've shared. And you know, Evelyn, your question about religion, you know, religion is kind of a becoming. It is kind of a, gosh, I better check off the boxes. I mean, for me, quite simply, everything changed. My belief, my faith literally transformed into absolute trust. You know, absolute trust. It's like, I'm in good hands. I've experienced that love. Take no heed what you'll eat or drink on the morrow. Consider the birds of the air, how they fly. They don't store up. And there was this knowing, you know, this inner knowing of, wow. And the result is nothing but gratitude. Thank you. You know, every sunset, it's like there's God. He painted the sky for me. You know, I mean, I brought a little orange for my lunch today. It's like, wow, the soil fed it, the rains watered it, the sunlight grew it, and God did that for me, that I can have lunch. You know, I mean, there's a gratitude piece where when I live life in gratitude, there's no room for anything else. There only is love. There only is love. But thank you, gents. Wow. This is the best part of my week. So I'm just thrilled to be with you today.
Oh, it's so easy. And that's why I knew there was no point. I wasn't going to write down any questions at all, because again, it's just about trust and going with the flow. I'm probably going to say that now. My head will go blank now. I probably jinxed myself. Yeah. But do you find, is that the blessings of this time, that we've been made to slow down? Dr. Jeff?
Yes, we need to slow down. And in fact, if you look on my website, on the page where I have my mentoring, I don't like to call it coaching, I call it mentoring. There's a page on there where I talk a paragraph or two about myself and invite people to send me a message. And it's my Levi's, my blue jeans, and my cowboy boots perched up on a footstool. And I say, when all the world's coaches are telling you you need to do more, that you need to be more efficient, be busier, do more things, I'm going to tell you to slow down. I'm going to tell you to connect and to live what you are and be what you're here for, and stop wasting your time trying to become something in the future. That's what I teach people.
Lovely. Declan, what do you think about this time and what we have been gifted for slowing down?
Yeah, I think it's a time where we've all rediscovered like what matters, the family, you know, our connections. That I know that every afternoon I take Alexander out on his walk or up to the woods. There's a flat place there up at Powers Court, and we go for a walk. Now, I was thinking if this pandemic hadn't hit, I'd have missed thousands of hours of fun and laughter and fun with him. So it's an amazing gift, you know, this time. And I always say we should never ever waste a good pandemic, because the big thing in this is, have I used this to grow as a person, for personal growth? Have I used this to go to God? Because if I'm inside unhappy and then the pandemic is outside, that's making me unhappy. Then I wait until the pandemic is over, and then I'm happy again. Then I've wasted it. And it's you know, I've wasted this time to discover and let go of all that junk that I've been gathering up inside over the years. And Jeff, on that thing of living in the now, I remember one time in Japan, we're asking a Buddhist monk out over Kyoto, that beautiful city of temples, through one of the Colombian interpreters. I said, what is Zen Buddhism about? And he said, it would take me 40 years to teach you Zen Buddhism. I said, well, look, I'm big in communications. I don't have 40 years. If you cannot tell me in 1 second, you don't understand, in one sentence, you don't understand it. And he, unfazed, he just said to me, okay, I will give it to you in 1 sentence, but it'll take you 40 years to live it. And I said, okay, well, what is the 1 sentence? And he said, you're only doing what you're doing. And I said, what? He said, you're only doing what you're doing. You, he says, you do not even wash the dishes and just wash the dishes. Your mind's going here, there, and everywhere. He said, before enlightenment, chopping wood, drawing water. After enlightenment, chopping wood, drawing water. I said, excuse me now, but maybe it's the translation, but they're the exact same sentence. That's the exact, before enlightenment, chopping wood, drawing water. After enlightenment, chopping wood, drawing water. You're making no sense. I am making total sense, he said. Before enlightenment, chopping wood, drawing water, and always the mental noise in your head, the judgment, the complaining, the whinging. Why is it always me that has to chop wood? There's no one else who chop wood around here. That's the 6th time this week I've drawn the water. They're making a doormat out of me. And the more you do around here, the more you're given to do. And it goes on and on. After enlightenment, chopping wood, drawing water, the joy of the work.
And that's how you're able to bring it into your daily life, is that awareness to be present. And it's not to say we don't slip out of it, but you become more aware of it. Oh, what's slipping in there, to bring yourself back to the now and the presence of the now. Thank you, Declan. I even forgot.
Evelyn, that thing, if you mention awareness, I just maybe for people to make sure that the ego will bring us awareness, but mostly it'll be a judgmental awareness. If we talk about awareness, always make it a compassionate awareness. Compassion for self, then compassion for others.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Thank you, Declan. Guys, I have no idea how long I've been on here. I don't keep an eye on time. I'm just going with what's feeling right. But I could sit and talk all night. I really could. Jeff Olsen. So I think I'll start winding it down now. I have no idea. I'm just going with this. What would you like, or could you offer to people at this stage that will bring hope or joy to this world? But because I know everything, most of everything that you have all come through, and it's not for people to look and say, oh, it's all right for them. They're full of confidence. They can get up and speak, or they've wrote a book. They're intelligent. They've gone through university. I don't have qualifications. I don't have the money that they have. And everybody that is sitting here have all experienced something in their life, many things in their life. Declan's brother has recently passed as well. Dr. Jeff came to a stage in his life where he had everything, but was in the deepest, darkest place that he could possibly be. Jeffery Olsen, what he came through himself, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. You see, and we're only given anything that what we are delivered. We have the strength, we have the ability to step through this, to see our way through it. We may not know it at the time, and it will only be in reflection, I'll come back and think, I got through it. But it's very important to be aware that we must experience these human experiences in life to know and transition to that, if there is the change and that feeling of home. Every time I even hear the word home, and I know I said to myself the other week, I said, and great things were happening, and I asked myself, what is it, Evelyn? But again, only in sitting in that silence, be still and know. And I put my hand on my heart and I asked myself, what is it, Evelyn? And it came in, I miss home. And it wasn't home, you know, the bricks, but I miss home. And what I had missed was that connection, that feeling that I would feel if I sit in meditation, that just overwhelmed of love, of feeling. And the reason I know why that it was always there, but how I disconnected is because what we had come through ourselves as a family with the loss of Daddy, and well, I say not the loss, but him not being here in body form, but I guess probably angers or resentments, that a feeling that of being felt that you were treated as a leper, anger at people for the fear that they possessed, and judgment. And I went through those too, but in doing that, it disconnected me from that feeling of home. And you see, it comes very, very clear when we sit and be still and know your answers come to you. And you're like, it was always with you. You're never alone. You're always walked with, you're always guided. And sometimes we just step in and out, but this is all for the growth too of our souls and in experiences in life. So Jeffery Olsen, over to you, sir, and we'll start winding it down. What would you like to deliver now to bring hope and joy to those that may be sitting watching tonight?
Wow. There's only love. There's only light. It all comes from that. Our challenges, those toughest times in my life, are the very things that expanded my soul. And when I shifted from asking, why me, and shifted into, what am I learning from this? You know, how is my soul expanding from this? What is the universe teaching me within it? And what opportunities do I have because of it? That's when things shifted. I used to believe life was a test. I now fully embrace that life is a gift. Every moment of it, every experience. It's my judgment of what's good or bad, but that's only my judgment. The divine only sends us angels. They only send us gifts. It's simply up to my choice as to how I receive it and how I watch my soul expand because of it.
And that may be difficult for people to look at and say, how can Jeffery Olsen say you had a car accident, you lost your leg, your wife, your son, and you say that's a gift, you see? And that's the beauty. Everything is in divine order. And that's how yourself and Jeffrey O'Driscoll met. That's how you speak the word of God. What's the word of God is love to the masses, to people, to help them perhaps, and it may awaken or tap in with them. Thank you so much for your courage, your kindness, your compassion, and your love. Thank you. Declan, Coyle.
Yeah, let's say, Evelyn, that at this time, it's that this moment took 13.8 billion years to get here. And the big question is, will it be better because it encountered me, or will it be worse? And I'd say that inside, you're a beautiful being living in a beautiful home inside. Outside, there may be COVID, there may be cancer, there may be grief, there may be all of that. But the pandemic outside does not make you not a beautiful person inside. And inside, you are divine. You're full of love, full of joy, full of life, full of hope. And our job is to now connect with that and bring that out to the world. If we see a mother playing with a child and they're laughing, that brings us joy. I think that this is a time just to bring that joy and bring that hope to people. It's there was an Irishman, a man called Dowling, who runs a lot of the health centers in New York. He came from Limerick. He was interviewed on the radio the other morning, and he used a lovely phrase at the end. He said, our job now at this time is to give oxygen to hope. I thought it was a lovely phrase, to give oxygen to hope, to give oxygen to joy. And then I'll leave you with the great green platform question. No matter what's happening, how do I respond with joyful, loving, compassionate service to whatever life is unfolding in front of me now?
Thank you,
That's
Declan.
it.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh, my heart's full. Dr. Jeff?
I was out on a run one day. I get a lot of good downloads when I'm running. And on this occasion, I was out for a run. And I asked the question, why is it so hard for me to learn to love? Because that's something I struggled with for many years. Part of it had to do with the death of my older brother, and I wasn't going to ever love anything again that could hurt me by leaving. And that was a big struggle for me to heal from that and get over it. And this one day I said, why is it so hard for me to learn to love? And the voice came back to me and said, so you can understand or have empathy for those who struggle to love and help them. And I thought, oh, isn't that wonderful? Why couldn't you have told me that 30 years ago? Of course, I wasn't ready to hear it 30 years ago. But on this occasion, my messenger was a male messenger, a masculine messenger. And he said, I give you love. It's a gift. You can't earn it. Share it. And I came home a different person. It completely changed me. And the next morning, the same messenger came back to me. And he said, every experience is to enable you to help someone else. And I said, wait a minute. I thought experiences were for personal growth. And I could go help other people if I wanted to. And the messenger said, the primary purpose of every experience is to enable you to help someone else. You get the secondary benefit of personal growth. So, like Jeff mentioned, I don't know why I'm going through tough times or having difficult experiences. I ask instead, what can I learn from this experience and how can I use it to help someone else? And when we have that shift in our focus, we move into the present and we live in the now and we experience divine love in the present and we share it with others and we release the judgments. People get so consumed with labeling things as good and bad. The problem with labeling things is you have to judge it first. You can't label it until you first judge it because you won't know what label to put on it. The problem is that we're not good judges. And so often what we think is bad ends up being good and vice versa. So when we step into the present and we love and we give love, we express love, we experience love, all that judgment stops and we have empathy. And then we're one.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you. Do you know what? I have noticed that, and I'm quite sure when I go back and watch the live on Facebook, that there have been comments, but I don't know what way I have this set up. I haven't seen anything pop up. But it is what it is. It was meant to be this. We all arrived in the time whenever we were. We've all learned something new for our brains tonight with the technology. And it has been just perfect. It's been lovely. I feel like I could sleep now. When I'm always speaking to you guys, I always feel that now that I'm ready to sleep. It's so lovely to be in your presence, and you have all been a great help for me in my life. You all have. You're very, very special men to me. And I want to say thank you so much. I want to thank everybody who has been watching here tonight. And I hope you take away from this, basically, what the message is, what God is. Should you choose whatever you choose to see God as, that it is within us. It is within us, and it is love. The importance to love self. The awareness, as Declan was saying, how I speak to myself, what I say to myself, how I fear judgment from others. But when we let go of judgment on ourselves and accept myself, this is who I am, and we let go of judgment on that, and we don't fear it on anyone else. Thank you so much. I'm always going to say joy to the world. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Thank you, thank you, thank you. God bless everyone. Stay safe and well. We are safe. We are well. Everything is in perfect divine order. Much love to you all. Thank you.